Hello everyone and welcome to the 44th edition of the Stately Office Hours. This is where us, the team at Stately, talk to you about what we've been working on with Stately tools and with XState. We get feedback from you, answer your questions, and give you as many cool demos as we can possibly manage. We really set a record last week. It was like 8 demos last week. Not quite so many this week. And this week, for the first time, we are streaming on Twitch. So hello, if you are the one subscriber that we have on Twitch, but hopefully more of you will join us if that's a great platform for you. We're trying to make this available on as many platforms as possible, so you can join in wherever feels good for you. If you have any questions during the stream, you can always ask us in the YouTube comments. You should also be able to ask us questions on Twitch, and that should be able to come up for us as well. And if you want to ask us stuff on our Discord, which is discord.gg/xstate, we've got a dedicated office hours channel in there. We're also Stately AI on Twitter and Stately on LinkedIn. You can send us a message on there and I will do my best to pick it up during the stream. And if I miss it, we'll make sure that we catch up with you later. So we'll start off this week, as we do all the other weeks, with introductions to the team. I'm Laura. I talk too much and I do advocacy for Stately. Next up, David.
I'm David. I should talk more. And I'm the founder of Stately and the creator of XState.
And Fazad.
Hey, I'm Farzad. I'm neither the creator of XState nor the founder of Stately. I just work here.
Just. Matthias next.
Hi, I'm Madeline Kidd from Stately team, working on open source software here at the core and other stuff.
And Anders.
Anders, I'm a software developer here at Stately. I'm doing all things coding.
And last but absolutely not least, Kevin.
Everyone, Kevin, doing engineering here at Stately, having a great time.
Yeah, we're all having a great time. It's been a good week. We got a lot done this week. So why don't we start off with a demo, because we know that everyone loves demos. David, would you show us what you've been doing with Markdown this week?
Sure. So just give me a minute. I actually have to prepare my screen. But
look, Eric is follower number 1 on Twitch. So there we go. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah. So yeah, we are going to be posting a lot more on Twitch and pretty much anywhere else. So hold on as I pick my window.
Eric has noticed that Kevin is in dark mode today. But Hidisel is admiring the white Stately t-shirt. It is nice. They're really good quality t-shirts as well.
All right. So yeah, let's just do a quick demo. I was actually making this state machine. You might recognize it to just to model the different statuses that we have in linear, because we were talking about like, hey, do we need all of these statuses? And so, yeah, what I realized is important to a lot of teams is, just descriptions, which is why, from the very beginning, we've had descriptions in the visualizer and, of course, descriptions in the editor, where you can add text-based descriptions here. But now, live, you could see this is at stately.ai. You can also add markdown descriptions. And so this includes things such as images and block quotes. So this is a quote. The one modification we made last time was that now headings, we're not going to have different levels for headings, because this isn't meant to be a place for you to like just write huge documents. So instead, we're just you could do basic headings and the font will be a little bit more bolder and larger. So this is a heading, and here is some sample text that is formatted. So yeah, this is live today, and it also works for events. So if I make an event, say over here, and I could add a description, another markdown event. So now, oh, by the way, the we fixed the styling for descriptions in events, so they will no longer be squished. Before this would be squished, you would see another markdown event all in a single column. Not really that easy to read. So now it follows the same rendering logic as the states over here. So we really encourage you to try this out. You could add links in there, add more information, and this does get converted to descriptions when you export it as a machine for both states and events, I believe. So please try that. Oh, you could also add images as well. In the future, we'll be adding the ability to drag and drop images, but for now, you could just include an image link like you can with any other markdown file. So please try it out and let us know what you think.
John asks, any emojis? You can already use emojis even in your state event names, as I know because I do it all the time. But yeah, you can add them in descriptions too.
Yeah, and also you might have noticed we've removed some of the icons from the states just because it was a little bit redundant. And really the only icons you need to see are for the final states. And if you have history state, we'll make this valid. So now only history and final states have those icons. Other states such as parallel, compound, and atomic states, or leaf node states, whatever we want to call them, they don't have an icon anymore. So you're going to see that we have a much cleaner look to the states and to the events. If you notice, we previously introduced that gap between the start and the end of them. So yes, of course, you could add emojis here. Let's add a rocket. Here we go.
If you David, if you pick out the emoji from the emoji picker on Mac, it works. But if you try to do the Unicode one, not the Unicode ones, but the ones that are included as the GitHub flavor extension, in that markdown standard, they won't work. Like colon, joy, colon, those things don't work right now.
Yeah, so this is a good feature request, and you could go to request it here. statelyai.canny.io.
Very nice. That is for anyone who can't see the size of that text. statelyai.canny.io.
You should probably indicate the proper thing, because otherwise it's going to link to or it's going to be a relative link. So yeah, just make sure to do that. And yeah.
I really like that you can use emojis as the state icons, basically. So instead of the redundant ones, we removed, you can actually customize it and make it really meaningful. It's nice.
Yeah, and in the future, we're going to have first-class support for adding whichever icons you want as like a main icon, not just as part of the state's title, because this would look a little bit weird in code when it's converted over to code, and people might not approve your PRs if there are emojis where there shouldn't be. So
but we're definitely an emoji-forward company.
Absolutely.
Eric says Giphy supports or go home. I mean, you can put your Giphy images in there, no trouble.
You
Eric,
could,
you just might
absolutely.
have to look at them in a different interface. I think that might be a bit much. This is an interesting question. David, you have a good answer for this. Has anyone ever understood what history states are? I'm writing history state explanations this week, but I'm not going to answer. I'm going to let someone else answer.
So, like a dedicated answer to Eric would be that his recent state chart that has like access not granted or access denied event that just goes out of very deep state machine just to like separate state could go back to the very same state that it was at or in when it did that exit, if you would actually grant it access again. So whatever state you were in already previously, you could go back to when targeting a history state, and everything would just be like restored. So you wouldn't have to remember the last known state in context and route that through some conditions and stuff like that. But that could be like resolved automatically by XState.
Mateusz, one thing to mention also, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think only the transition is restored to the history value. So the actions and the side effects that you ran, they're not going to be present in the context or are going to be executed, right?
I think they will be executed again. Like, for example, invokes would have to be re-executed again if you enter them, like if you enter the parent states for them. So I imagine the same happens for regular actions. So if you exit from some state that, I don't know, like it is camera on, for example, you have such a state, and if you then enter like some parent state, and it has that history state, it is that history state, and you enter that history state, then it will automatically go into this is camera on state, and then I don't know, like all related actions that are there will be replayed. Like maybe not exactly replayed, they will be executed. So I don't know, some communication with the camera could just set up itself again.
Yeah, here's a quick example over here. I have a billing state, and the initial state, since we need to specify one, is pay by bank, like just giving bank information right now. And you could, of course, select bank or card as a user. And so when you click next, it takes you to the shipping state. But let's say you want to go back, and let's say that this is like a nested layout where you want to show bank or card. Right now, if you just go back, it's going to go to bank, even though you selected card. But really, you want to go to the last one that you were on. So instead, you would navigate to the history state, and then that will choose bank or card, depending on which was the most recent child states that this parent state was in. So
Great
hopefully
demo.
that explains it. Yep.
Cedric asks, can we click on a link from Markdown in the VS Code chart? This isn't working for him right now.
Oh, so in the VS Code extension, this might not be working. So we'll take a look into it. And this has to do with our usage of iframes in the extension. We do have plans, by the way, to number one, remove the login requirements for the VS Code extension, unless you're using collaboration features. And number two, make it so that it's embedded within the VS Code extension instead of being in an iframe, which is going to solve a lot of problems.
John said, having a live state chart like this in the history docs would be ace. Consider it a feature request. I'll put it on the top of my docs list. John, we'll make sure we get that in there because it's a good idea. And yeah, Eric thought it was a great explanation. So I think he understands what the history state is now.
Great. I'll have to make a short video about this.
Yeah, that would be really cool. And while you have your screen still open there, David, would you just show us the fact that we have now renamed systems to projects? What do I mean by that? Could you zoom a little bit as well, please? Thank you. So here, what used to be called systems is now called my projects. And it's just to make you less confused about how to organize your machines. Is that about right, David?
Yeah, that's right. So I know this is like, I've been confused by the term systems myself, and I was the one who introduced the term into this, but really it's about projects. So a system is with a system, you have a natural hierarchy of actors. So you have one main machine that might spawn different machines. But this is something where it's if a machine is active. And so it's a natural configuration of those machines in a hierarchical way. But it doesn't really make sense when people are using it to basically group machines. So projects is a more appropriate term, because then we could specify, if we go to the Discover page, we could specify just collections of machines that are supposed to work together. And so I think the term project just better shows that than systems.
Yeah, we threw a few terms around and discussed options and thought that this is probably one of the broadest but most understandable terms. But if anyone has any difficulties with it or finds it confusing or thinks there's a better alternative, let us know. We're always open to ideas and suggestions for sure. Now, next up, we've got just a couple of questions that I think we should address before we move on. So, Eric Every morning at 9 a.m. UTC, you have to reauth with the VS Code extension. I'm assuming that's a real problem, not a joke, because you have priors, Eric. So, folks, any idea why this might be going on? I think I saw, Fazad, you mentioned that in response to someone with a similar issue, that maybe having the extension open for a long time might cause problems.
Yeah, it's possible, because I usually get these sort of funky problems with the VS Code extension just because my session is open for too long. Yeah, Eric, that might be like a feature for your own user session. So I would say log out and use another account.
Yeah.
We're just banning your account. But I think what he is, I don't know if it's related to like the features and the migrations that we push to production, but it might be that your session expires whenever we have, some shifts in the data schema or something in the production. And then you have to re-authenticate as long as you've been open during the feature updates on the production.
Regardless, we're going to remove the login requirement for the extension, like I mentioned.
Yeah, that was supposed to be ready for this demo, for today to be demoed, but
yeah. So look forward to that next week.
Great. And I'm sorry, Machid, I'm really bad. Matthias is going to be able to tell me how to pronounce his name properly. How does integration with React Suspense work? Anyone got any clues here?
Hello, Maciej.
Maciej. Thank you.
Yeah. The question is sort of like, I do not fully understand the context behind the question. What exact integration with React Suspense do you have in mind? Yeah, I would just need more context behind the question to answer it. Because like at the moment, I think XState React is mostly compatible with Suspense. Or I didn't really test it out that much because we are not using Suspense a lot in our code base. Just thinking quickly through like the inner workings, I think it should work. But if something is not working, then please just open an issue and we'll be able to discuss this further and propose discuss patterns and maybe even discover that something is in fact not working in XState React, and we'll just fix it then.
Also, I created a feature request in stately.ai.canny.io for React Suspense support. So we would love for you to add your use cases and your comments over there. Yeah, just because I noticed it was in the previous PR, so I moved it over to a feature request.
Oh, that's good to know. So next up, Matthias, while we've got you, would you let us know if there's anything that people should look out for in the new XState release that happened today?
Yeah, so I've just released today a new version of XState, like a new minor one. So not V5 yet, but I think this like the last minor one. I hope for XState V4. We don't really plan to introduce any more features. We will just be on the lookout for bugs and stuff like that. But we'll be shifting all of the focus to V5 work to finish it. So two major changes in it in that latest minor version that has been released is a fix for exit actions. So previously, when a machine was stopped from the outside, so for example, when the parent has exited the containing state for that with that child, then a child would get stopped, and its exit actions could throw sometimes. They weren't really resolved correctly. So we fixed that, and everything should work on that front correctly now. Please be aware that when such a situation occurs, those actions might be called with a special XState.stop event. And we've introduced support for that event in TypeGen. So yeah, like update your VS Code extension or the CLI, because the new version should be able to generate those events correctly for correct actions and so on. And in general, like I've been working on some improvements in XState typegen recently, so it should be much more strict and correct. So please update for your own sake. And the second big change in that XState version is a new like opt-in feature flag that is called predictable action arguments. You can check out the release notes to like get the link to the docs and read a little bit more about it. But essentially, we've fixed some with it. We are fixing some longstanding issues about what events are handed to the action implementations and stuff like that. It could be in the past a little like it's much more predictable. Basically, like every action should now always be called with the related event. So whatever event has actually caused a transition to be taken, that one should be always now handed to the action for it to resolve and stuff like that. So yeah, those are, and this is basically like an opt-in into the default behavior of the V5. So it's a way for you to start upgrading to like the new behavior, but it's an opt-in, so you are not forced to do it just yet.
Great. And John has anticipated what we were going to discuss next, and that is the shallowEqual in the XState React package. David, would you like to show us a little demo? I think you're muted, David, sorry. Oh, still muted. I can try, no, I can't unmute you. Could you do it like by signs?
Sorry about that.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah, sorry. My computer somehow freezes whenever I try to share a screen. But yeah, we have a new shallow comparison helper function called shallowEqual. And so this really helps when you're using the useSelector hook. And remember, useSelector is used when you want to, I say use too many times, is used when you want to select specific values from actor states. And so this allows you to prevent re-renders. However, this, in theory, works best when you have primitive values such as strings, numbers, booleans, things like that. But when you are selecting objects that you construct within, for example, if we're getting the user and we know that the user properties might not change, but the user object reference might change, or we're constructing an object in here, then this is basically going to change every single time without a comparator. So before you, and right now you also have the option to just add any custom comparator to say, hey, this object is actually equal to the previous object. But for common use cases, this shallowEqual function actually does the job nicely for both objects and arrays and will shallowly compare the previous and next values of those objects so that you could prevent unnecessary re-renders if re-renders are expensive in your application. So this is a default export from XState React, and we encourage you to use it if you're using useSelector with more complex types like objects and arrays.
Great. John asks, is useSelector the recommended way to produce computed values?
Yes, so useSelector is the recommended way. If you are using useMachine, then that's going to re-render the component every single time the state changes, which most of the time is what you want, but sometimes in more performance-sensitive situations is not what you want. So for computed values, we do recommend a combination of useSelector and getting just the service. So you would use interpret instead of useMachine so that you're not actually getting every single update of the state.
Great. Now we did have a question of the week this week. We only got one response so far, but I thought it would be fun for the rest of us to discuss what we do. And because the question was, what kinds of diagrams do you use for development? And so we had a response on Twitter from, now I'm really sorry if I mispronounce this, Bua, maybe? Let's hope it's something like that. We use flowcharts to draw the overall process of the app we are building. It describes the UI, decisions users make, or decisions depending on REST API or WebSocket responses, and how the UI reacts to that. Our XState machines are an implementation detail to make that work. So that's pretty cool. It's a good answer to have, is that it's using state machines for sure.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because flowcharts, if you squint, could sort of be thought of as state machines. And flowcharts mean, a couple different things. They could be used in terms of course, describing the flow of a program, where it's like you're in this state, and then when this happens, depending on some conditions, go to this state or go to this other state. So flowcharts are great for that. And you could think of state machines and state charts as basically flowcharts plus. They're an extended version of flowcharts, and they allow you to be more flexible with your logic, have more detail, and to just describe things closer to the actual implementation. Another use case for flowcharts is decision making. So you would use a flowchart as simply a way to express a decision tree, or whatever you want to call it, where you need to make a decision, and based on things that you already know, you could know your way through the entire chart and make a decision. So those are two of the ways I've seen flowcharts used. But I think that flowcharts is a term that we should use more often, especially when getting people to recognize that, hey, these are actually state machines in disguise. And, you could convert flowcharts to, to state machines with state chart semantics pretty easily.
Yeah, even just saying flows is kind of representative of what you're doing, and that kind of opens it up to all kinds of different ways of describing behavior in a visual way. Yeah. Anyone else in the team use any diagrams for development? I mean, I draw stuff all the time. It's definitely a series of boxes and arrows, but not necessarily anything with a formal name. Anybody use any other kinds of diagrams?
I usually find myself writing, using this Stately editor to build decision trees while I'm trying to do some sort of development or implementing flow, or just, me and Kevin were recently talking about this, that we usually find ourselves in a situation that we have a bunch of if and else's. Sometimes the logic is recursive, sometimes it's just like a pipe or a flow that you go from point to point, and you want to output a result at the end. And these are named decision trees or workflows or something, and they could be also modeled using state charts. So we use that, the editor, to visualize them and make the diagram for them.
Cool. So Kevin, that's a problem you've had as well then, that you've solved with the editor.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've tried to adapt other kinds of charts, to using the tool in the editor. So, for example, I used to, do sequence diagrams, and I really liked whatever the one is where it looks like it's drawn on the back of a napkin. But so sometimes, between that or the decision trees, as far as I was talking about, you can kind of model this in the state chart, which is nice. But I also, I love just doing things on paper, or I used to do things on a whiteboard when I wasn't remote. So.
Yeah, it's when starting to use the editor becomes quicker than doing it with pen and paper, we know that we're doing great.
Yeah. I asked a question a while ago, what's your equivalent to making a blueprint, which does imply something that's, visual. And we've gotten a lot of great answers. One of them that I really like is mind mapping. Mind maps are really useful. And in fact, before creating Stately, I had a huge mind map of just everything I want to accomplish. And so what's interesting about mind maps is you could take a larger, just a larger topic, and you could really drill into that and refine that. So, we're working on logic, and it involves these different tasks to do. And this task might involve these separate subtasks. And so with state charts, the analogy is using parents and child states. So it fits really well. But yeah, so that's definitely a really useful diagram. Of course, TL draw.
Yeah. I love mind mapping. I do it for writing talks. That's actually made me think, next time I write a talk, I'm going to try writing it in the editor. Let's see how that works. I think it could work pretty well.
Yeah, now that we have markdown support.
I have to make sure it ends up being linear at some point, but that's usually the problem I have with writing talks in general, is how to get it into a linear format. Because anything else doesn't really work very well if you're working with chronological time. John says, I've considered getting a cheap Wacom tablet. We say Wacom, I don't know if that's a British thing, to use with TL Draw. That's quite a fun idea, being able to draw everything out using a tablet. Then you really are mimicking the pen and paper experience, aren't you?
Yeah, I'd love to use TL Draw with Stately AI. We've had ideas about just mixing the two together, so we'll see if we can do anything there.
Cool. Joyce said, I whiteboard my half-assed boxes and arrows a lot, but dragging to rearrange is easier than erase and redraw. That is so true, and especially with my pen and paper, I just end up scribbling out and starting all over again. It's much quicker to be able to drag your boxes about, that's for sure. Change where the arrows are going.
Yeah. It's really great to use pen.
Yeah, that's true. Pencil would be wiser. But then how else will I end up with notebooks absolutely full of drawings?
That's true.
Now, before we wrap up, we wanted to make sure that if you haven't responded to our survey yet, you get in there and do it, because we will be closing the survey, I think, midnight tonight, we said, in Eastern time. Is that right, David?
Yes.
Somewhere around that time, but we'll be doing it very soon. So make sure you get your responses in at stately.ai/survey. If you know anyone who hasn't used the Stately tools before, if you could let them know and see if they would like to fill out the survey for us too, because we're really looking at ways to get people who are completely new to our tools, what they would need in order to get involved. And so having that kind of feedback would be useful to us as well. I think Jenny had said that we'd got quite a few responses recently of that nature, and it's been really helpful for us.
Yeah.
Great. And so if anyone doesn't have anything else they wanted to mention this week, my earphones are running out of battery. And they've just told me they're about to drop out. So I think that might be a good time for us to wrap up, unless anyone has anything else that they want to talk about this week.
Nope, I just want to show this. When can we get red yarn crazy mode in the editor? Please add it to statelyai.canny.io as a feature request. It sounds silly, but this will nudge us towards like experimenting more with, like adding TL Draw or just arbitrary design elements into the editor and making more of a powerful communication tool using visual medium.
Absolutely. What seems like fun suggestions often have a kernel of something really valuable in them. Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this week. We appreciate all of you in the comments with your questions and your feedback. You know that you make these streams as great as they are. Thank you, team, for joining us, and we will see you all again this time next week. Goodbye.